In this video, we'll be creating a set of NFT loot boxes using thirdweb's pre-built smart contract called the Pac. We'll firstly create a collection of ERC 1155 NFTs as well as our own ERC20 token, which we'll use to bundle up into a set of loot boxes that can be opened by a wallet to randomly reveal some of the tokens that we bundled up to create the packs. Remember, you can always access the source code for this project in the description. And if you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more Web3 tutorials like this. Without further ado, let's get right into the tutorial. So the first thing we want to do is go to thirdweb.com and we'll be going to the thirdweb dashboard to deploy our token contract, our ERC 1155 NFT collection, as well as our Pac contract. So the first thing I'm going to do is go and deploy a Pac contract. And to do that, just go ahead and click deploy new contract. And if you haven't already, you'll be prompted to connect your wallet before you get to this step. And if you don't know what that means, we'll have a guide in the description of how to get set up with some test funds, as well as create your very own wallet using MetaMask. I'll assume that you have already got to this point and you're ready to build your contract out now. So let's go ahead and click the pre-built contracts. And the first one we're going to do is the Pac NFT collection. To do that, we'll click create NFTs and tokens. And we'll go ahead and click the Pac collection here now. And you can see it's an ERC 1155 NFT collection, which basically just means instead of each NFT having one unique copy, each NFT can have a certain amount of quantity. Like you can configure each token to have 10 copies of that NFT or 100 copies of that NFT and things like that. So it's rather than a one of one, you can have multiple copies of each NFT. Let's go ahead and click the Pac pre-built contract. And here's where you'll be prompted to set up the metadata for your contract. So you give it a name, an image, a symbol. I'm just gonna call mine cool packs. And here's where you can also set up things like royalty fees, which is fees that you take on secondary sales of the NFTs in this collection. And I'm gonna go ahead and select the Go Early testnet for this project. Once you're ready, go ahead and click the Deploy Now button down here, which will prompt you to deploy a proxy contract. And if you wanna learn more about proxy contracts, we'll have a resource in the description for that as well. And here's where we get to see thirdweb's Contract Explorer. And you can have a play around on this page if you want. It basically shows you all of the functions available on the Pac contract. So we have things like create pack, grant role, which is in terms of the permissions. If you want to have a play around with that, feel free to do so. And you can also notice we have tabs unlocked here. So we have the NFTs tab, we have the permissions tab, activities, settings, source, and feel free to have an exploration if you haven't done so already. But in order to create some packs, we actually need some tokens to bundle up into those packs. And to do that, I'm going to be using the edition pre-built contract that thirdweb provides, as well as the token pre-built contract. So let's go ahead and create that edition pre-built contract now. Now the edition is similar. It's a pre-built contract under the NFTs and tokens category. And this one is also ERC 1155, so you can have multiple copies of each NFT. Once again, go and set up the metadata for your contract. For this NFT collection, we'll be creating NFTs out of pirate items like swords, hooks, or compasses and things like that. And we'll be bundling them up into our packs, which are going to be treasure chests. So let's go ahead and call this one cool pirates, cool pirate items maybe. And once again, you can set out the royalty fees and description, image, symbol, things like that. But just for this tutorial, I'm going to give it a name and we'll once again deploy this to the Go Early test network. Looks like we deployed successfully. So let's go ahead and mint our first ERC 1155 NFT into this collection. To do that, we'll click the mint button and here's where you'll be prompted to upload the metadata of your NFTs. Now I have got a pirate sword here that I'm going to drag in for our first NFT. And this one will be called the sword. You can give it a description if you choose. Let's say it's a sharp one. And then we'll provide some initial supply. So this is how many copies of this particular NFT there will be in circulation. So you might want to do some thinking ahead of time about how many packs you want to create and how many NFTs are going to be within those packs. So for example, if I wanted to have around 10 packs and I wanted 5 NFTs in each pack, I'd probably want to create 50 total NFTs because we'll have 5 of each in those 10 packs, which is going to equal out to 50, you know, 5 times 10. And you will want to do some kind of planning ahead of time to make sure that you have the right amount of NFTs for the right amount of packs that you want to produce. So for this, I'll just go ahead and create 100 and click the Create NFTs button. And what this is going to do is it's going to mint 100 of this particular NFT. So as you can see, we have an approval for a transaction here. I'll go ahead and confirm this one. And once that transaction has gone through successfully, it might take 1 or 2 seconds for your NFTs to show up in this overview tab here. So we have our media, we have our name, we have the description, and behind the scenes, all of this metadata has been uploaded and pinned to IPFS. And if you don't know what that means, we'll have another resource in the description to learn more about what pinning metadata means in IPFS and how thirdweb handles that behind the scenes for you. But as you can see, we have 100 swords successfully minted, and you can play around with these buttons here. We have transfer, airdrop, burn. So maybe you want to airdrop people that maybe hold a specific token or things like that. Just to demonstrate how you can have different levels of rarity in these packs, I'm going to go ahead and mint a more rare NFT. And for this one, we'll give a golden sword. So we'll say golden sword. And rather than 100 of the silver swords that we created, this one's only going to have 5 in total supply. And this means when we create the packs, we bundle these together. As you can see, if we have 100 swords compared to 5 golden swords, the chances of you randomly selecting one of the golden swords is significantly lower than opening one of the silver swords. And this is just going to be another mint transaction that you need to approve. And you can have however many NFTs that you want. You can tell that if we have only 5 of these golden swords compared to 100 of the silver swords, it's going to be significantly more likely that you get a silver sword rather than the golden sword, and you can kind of achieve that rarity that you want on a per NFT or per token as we're about to create basis. So now we're happy with our cool pirate items. Let's head back to the thirdweb dashboard and we'll click deploy new contract again. We'll go ahead and click pre-built contracts once more and create NFTs and tokens. And the token contract. Now this is an ERC20 token, which essentially just means it's kind of a cryptocurrency or a collection where each token in the collection is worth the same as each other token. And that's known as fungible tokens rather than non-fungible tokens, which is the NFTs. So let's go ahead and click the token. And once again, you fill out the metadata. Let's call this gold, if I could spell, gold coins. And we'll deploy this to the Go Early network as well. So once that transaction has approved, you will have your own ERC20 token, and you'll need to go ahead and mint some supply of this token as well. And just so you get a bit of a clearer understanding of how these packs are going to be created, I've just cooked up this quick diagram where we have our silver sword NFTs. So we have 100 silver swords, we have 5 gold sword NFTs, and I'm going to go ahead and mint 45 gold coin tokens. And as you can see, all of these will be bundled up together, and this is a total of 150 tokens. Now, let's say we wanted 5 tokens per pack, and we can say 150 divided by 5 is 30. At least in my head, that's 30. I hope that math is correct. But this is 30 packs. So 30 packs with 5 tokens per pack. And that's why I'm going to go ahead and mint 45 of these. One thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to have exactly one of the token go into one reward. So you can have multiple rewards per pack, but you can also have multiple quantity of each reward. So for example, if I wanted to give out 5 swords per pack, maybe I would say each reward that goes into the pack is 5 swords rather than 1 sword. And you can kind of see how this would be relevant to ERC 1155 NFTs that we're working with now, or especially relevant to the ERC20 tokens. If you wanted to say, rather than give them 1 gold coin, you could give them 5 gold coins so that they could buy a sword from the shop or something like that. But it's something to keep in mind. You will need to do a little bit of planning ahead of time of how many tokens goes into each reward, and also how many rewards go into each pack. So you'll need to do a little bit of planning, a little bit of maths and calculations before you come up with a plan of how many packs are going to be generated and how many tokens are going to be given out in each pack. But looks like the mint2 transaction for the ERC20 tokens has come up. So go ahead and confirm that transaction as well. And what that's going to do is it's just going to mint 45 of the ERC20 tokens. In my case, it's the gold coins into that ERC20 collection. And at this point, now we have the actual NFTs and the tokens that we're ready to bundle up into the packs. And we're going to go ahead and jump into some coding now using the TypeScript SDK to create these packs with these tokens bundled up together. And then what we're going to do is we're going to build out that web application where users can connect their wallet, see how many packs they have, and open one of those packs to see the rewards. So let's go ahead and jump into the coding side of things. So I'll bring up the terminal now, and the easiest way, in my opinion, to get started with thirdweb is to use the thirdweb CLI. And the thirdweb CLI has a npx thirdweb create command, which is going to allow you to create a boilerplate project with the tools and the frameworks and the languages that you prefer. So the first step is to give your project a name. So let's give it a name of Pirate Packs. And you can now select the framework you want to use. You can use Next.js, you can use Create React App. Recently we added the Vite option if you want to use that. I'm going to go ahead and use the Next.js. And here's where you get to choose JavaScript or TypeScript. I'm going to use TypeScript. You can feel free to choose whichever you prefer. What this is going to do is it's going to pull the thirdweb example next TypeScript starter repo. And as you can see, if you have a play around in here, we're about to see it in Visual Studio Code as well. But essentially, it's just a really boilerplate code with the thirdweb React SDK installed, as well as the thirdweb TypeScript SDK and a basic wallet connection on the homepage here. So what that's going to do is copy that. And once it's downloaded successfully, you'll be able to change the directory by saying cd into the directory that you just created. And if you want to have a play around, you can do code space dot and open up that in Visual Studio. Now I'll zoom in a little bit here and you can see the pages that we created. So we have _app.tsx, we have index.tsx, which is the home page. And inside the app, we have the thirdweb provider wrapping that application. Now, the first thing you want to do is change this active chain ID. Since we didn't deploy to mainnet, we deployed to the Goerli testnet. I'm going to go ahead and change that from mainnet to Goerli. And under here, you can see it has all of the dependencies installed. We don't have to run npm install. And if we want, we can open up a new terminal and run the yarn dev command to see what we have installed and running, and visit localhost 3000 to get a preview of this application. So as you can see, if I zoom in a little bit, we have a very basic connect with MetaMask and shows your address if that user's wallet is connected, and a disconnect wallet button. The first thing we want to do though is we'll go back to Visual Studio Code and we'll create a scripts folder. Now within this scripts folder, we'll create a script called bundle packs. I'm going to be using the .mjs file extension, and this just allows us to run it from the command line a lot more easily without running into errors about imports and things like that. The first thing we'll do in this script is instantiate the thirdweb SDK using our wallet's private key. And to do that, we'll firstly import the thirdweb SDK from @thirdweb-dev/SDK, which is the TypeScript SDK. And then we'll read our environment variables to read our private key and instantiate the thirdweb SDK from that securely without exposing our private key in the source code. And we'll be using the library fs to read in this chest.png file, which is the, if I could zoom in here we go, is the treasure chest file for the packs that we're going to be creating. And we'll firstly be uploading that image to IPFS using the SDK, and then using that IPFS hash as the image metadata for our pack NFTs that we're going to create. So make sure you have a file called chest.png or whatever you're going to call it. Maybe yours isn't pirate packs, maybe it's basketball player packs or something like that. So you'll just need some kind of file that you're going to upload as a metadata image for the actual packs themselves. Next, we'll create a async immediately invoked function expression, which is basically a fancy way of writing a function that gets run immediately. So when we run this script, it's going to just run this code inside here. And within this, we'll firstly get all of our contract addresses from the 3 smart contracts that we just deployed on the thirdweb dashboard. And you can get those from this button underneath the name of the contract that you deployed. Just go ahead and click that. So this is our token, and you'll click it for the addition as well as a packs, and just paste them in to variables called pack address, token address, and addition address so that we can reuse them throughout the code. Next, we'll instantiate the thirdweb SDK. So we'll say from private key, and we're reading in our private key environment variables, and we'll explain that in a short second if you don't know what that means. And make sure to configure the second value to be the same chain as the contracts as you deployed. So if you're using Mumbai, then go ahead and use that. If you're using Goerli like we did in this video, make sure this value is Goerli in here. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but hopefully you get what I mean. And next, we're going to get the pack itself using the SDK. So we'll say sdk.getPack using the pack address. And what we'll do next is we will set the allowance that the pack contract has over the token contract. And what that means is when we're bundling them together, the Pac contract needs the permission to transfer funds from the token contract itself into the packs that we're going to create. And since that action is coming from the Pac contract, it needs that specific approval from the token contract in order to do that. And we're going to do a similar thing here for the addition. And what we're going to do is we're going to write set approval for all rather than set allowance. And this is just difference between NFTs and ERC20 tokens. But this is the same sort of premise. We're saying explicitly to the addition contract, you know, hey, it's okay. Our Pac contract can have the permission to transfer tokens from the NFT addition contract to the Pac contract. We need to do this because the Pac contract has to have that permission in order to be able to create the packs from the NFTs and from the tokens. And the next thing we'll do is we'll read in the chess.png image. And what we'll do is we'll upload that using thirdweb storage SDK. So we'll say upload the chess to IPFS, await stk.storage.upload. And what this does is it uploads the image file to IPFS and pins it in the background for you. And you can grab each of the files that you uploaded. So you could pass in many files. And what we're doing is we're grabbing the 0th, which is the first one that we uploaded. Since we're only uploading one, it looks a bit silly, but we have the URL of the first image that we just uploaded to IPFS. And we'll be using this image as the metadata in the next step here. So we're going to say await pac.create, and this is going to be where we put the code of the tokens that are going to be bundled up into the creation of these packs. So we'll say, firstly, we have the pack metadata, which is where this image URL comes in handy. So we have the name of the pack is treasure chests. The description is a chest containing tools and treasure to help you on your voyages. And the image is that treasure chest.png file that we uploaded to IPFS in this previous step. And now what we want to do in this pack.create function, we're going to specify the ERC20 tokens, we're going to specify the ERC1155 tokens, and if you have ERC721 tokens, you can also add and bundle those up together as well. But since we created an addition and a token, the first thing we want to do is set those ERC20 rewards, which will be our tokens. Since we only have one token, we'll just put an array of objects which contains one object, which uses the contract address of our token address, which we defined up here, which is our ERC20 token address. And you can see this is where you could customize how many rewards of each token go into an actual reward. So you could change this, instead of being one, you could say for each reward, I want to give out 5 gold coins. And then this quantity is how many of those rewards go into the packs. So it's kind of how many are in each reward, how many rewards there are, and this is the total amount that go into all of the packs. So you need to configure that to your liking. I'm just making it simple here, where we have 1 gold coin going into each reward. The next thing we'll do is specify the NFTs that we want bundled up in this ERC1155 rewards array here. Now, since we have 2 NFTs that we're going to bundle up into these tokens, we'll have 2 objects in this array rather than just the one for ERC20 rewards. So here is the first one. We have the silver swords, and this just identifies the silver sword using the contract address and the token ID. So the addition address is the addition contract that we created. So if you go up to the dashboard and you go back to your addition, this is the contract address here. And you can see ID 0 is the token ID for the silver sword. And token ID 1 is the ID for the gold sword that we're about to add after this one. So here we have contract address is addition address, token ID is 0, quantity per reward. Again, it's the same situation as above. You can have multiple swords or multiple NFTs per reward. And this kind of all ties together of how many packs you want to create and how many rewards you want per pack. So next, it's pretty much exact same. So we want the gold swords, which as we mentioned was token ID 1, and we have 1 quantity per reward, and the total rewards is 5. The final thing you want to configure is the total rewards per pack. So this is how many tokens get opened when you open a pack, or how many tokens get selected randomly when you actually do call that open function. Now, since we wanted 5 tokens per pack, we'll say rewards per pack is 5 here. And you can configure this and do the maths of how many packs you want to create given the amount of tokens that you're trying to bundle up. But as we did in that calculation of that diagram, we're going to be creating 30 packs from the 150 tokens that we're bundling up here together. So this will give us 30 total packs with 5 rewards per pack. And we have different kinds of tokens and different rarity for each of those tokens. So the most common thing that you're going to be opening is the silver swords. So you'll probably be opening multiple silver swords per pack. And if you get really lucky, you'll get a gold sword in a pack, but most likely you'll probably get a combination of the silver swords as well as the gold coins that we created. And the really rare packs will open up a gold sword here. So now the final thing we need to do before running this code is we've imported this private key here from our environment variables. Now, if you don't know what environment variables are, it's pretty much a secure way of importing sensitive values into your scripts. And to do that, we'll create a file at the root of our project called .env. And what you'll do in this file is, firstly, you never ever want to commit this to Git. So you can go into the git ignore file if you do have one. And what you want to do is just put .env in here. And that will mean that you never commit this file to Git and you never want to share this file with anyone. It's really important that you don't leak your private key when you do this. And please make sure that you don't share this with anyone and don't commit this to any repository. This should always just be a local machine thing, and this should never be leaked anywhere because anyone who sees this can access the funds within your wallet. And we'll have a resource in the description to learn more about private keys and how you can export your private key. I'm not going to show you my private key value here, but what you want to do in this file is just create a variable that looks like this. So you have private_key, and then you'll paste your private key that you get from your wallet, such as a MetaMask wallet, and it will look like a big long string of numbers and letters. And once you're done with that, just save this file and close it. And please remember never to share this or never commit it to any repositories. Once you're done with that, remember you always should have the correct network set up in this thirdweb SDK instantiation. But once you're done with that, we'll open up the terminal window. What we'll do is we'll run node and we'll just pass the file path of the script that we just created. So for me, that's node/scripts/bundle packs.mjs. And if we run this, what it's going to do is run all of the code in this function here. And hopefully we'll reach this console log down the bottom here. And we've added these console logs along the way to sort of see where it's at. So we should see the set approval for token, set approval for addition. Hopefully, if all of our packs are created successfully, we'll reach the bottom of the file here where we have packs created. And next we have set approval for addition, uploaded the asset to IPFS. And now we are here on line 40. We're creating the packs and bundling those NFTs and those tokens into our packs here. And it looks like we were successful in creating the packs. So just to double check, let's go back to the dashboard. We should see now that we have successfully minted 30 of these treasure chests. And on the dashboard, you should be able to see that you've successfully minted a total supply of 30 of the treasure chests. And you should be able to see the asset that you uploaded. In my case, was the treasure chest here as well. And the description and all of this metadata has been uploaded and pinned to IPFS for us in the background. Let's go ahead and start building out the application that lets users connect their wallet and open up their packs. To do that, we'll go back to the Pirate Packs repo, and now we're gonna exit the scripts folder and we'll go back to the index.tsx file. First thing I'm going to do is copy and paste the styles I have from another repo, and you can feel free to use the same styles that I'm going to be using in this project if you go to the source code in the description. I don't want to go through too much CSS in this video as it is a bit of a pain and there's quite a lot of it. So feel free to copy my CSS if you're going for the same look and feel of the application, but otherwise I'm just going to be referencing that file without explaining it too much. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to connect to our Pac contract, and we can do that using the use Pac hook. And to do that, we'll say const pac is equal to use Pac. And here is where we simply paste in the address of our Pac contract. So for me, that looks like that. And we have successfully connected to our Pac contract. And next, what we want to do is we want to load the NFTs that the connected wallet has from this NFT collection. Because when you think about it, the Pac is really just a collection of ERC 1155 tokens in each different kind of pack. You could have multiple different kinds of packs, maybe one's more rare than the other or more expensive than the other. And with each of thirdweb's NFT contracts comes this hook called use owned NFTs. And if I just go ahead and import that from the React package up here, This comes back with all of the NFTs that the currently connected wallet owns, as well as a loading flag here. Now behind the scenes, this is using React Query, which if you're not familiar, has this syntax where you have the data and it comes back as is loading. It can have things like is error here and things like that. So pretty handy. And what we're doing here is we're grabbing the data, destructuring that from the hook that comes back and renaming that to NFTs. So if we say console.log pack, and console.log NFTs, and we hit up the terminal, we can run the yarn dev command and go back to localhost 3000. And in the console, if we click F12, you should be able to see packs is the Pac contract here, and NFTs is currently undefined because we haven't connected our wallet. So if I zoom in once again, we can see if I connect here, NFTs should go from undefined to an array of the NFTs that I currently own once that information has loaded. So it looks like it's come back now. I'll zoom in the console as well for you. And as you can see, our pack is a contract here, and all of the functionality that we can interact with that pack is available. And the NFTs, once that information has come back from the contract, is now an array of objects that the currently connected wallet owns, including the owner, the metadata that automatically gets resolved from IPFS, as well as a supply. And this is currently in a big number. This is just hexadecimal format, but basically this represents a number, and we're going to use the ethers library to convert that from a big number to a real number that a human can read. If you can read hexadecimal, that's good for you, but it's probably more useful if we convert that. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code now, we're going to write the code that transforms this NFTs array into an array of items on the UI. To do that, we're going to use the map function to run over each of the items in the NFTs array and transform them into an item on the UI. So firstly, we will create a top level div that has a class name of container, and we'll need to import all the stuff that we're about to use, but we'll do that afterwards. And what we'll do within this div, we have another div that we are using the isLoading flag that came back from the hook of use owned NFTs. And what we'll do here is we'll have a loading tag if that information is loading, so that the user knows that information is coming back and that something hasn't gone wrong. But if the NFTs did come back from that hook, what we'll do is we will create another div where we'll, inside this div, map over each of the NFTs. Now, if you're not familiar with map, basically it runs over each of the items in the array, and this NFT, you can access the NFT or the item in the array that's currently being iterated on. So what we'll do is we'll transform each NFT in the array into a div. And within this div, what we're going to use is one of thirdweb SDK's UI components called the thirdweb NFT Media Component. And what it allows you to do is pass in the metadata to this component. And what it does behind the scenes is it detects the file type and displays a component, a HTML component that corresponds to that kind of file type. So for example, if we have an image metadata for our NFT, it's going to show us an image tag. But if the metadata was an MP4 file or an MP3 file, or some other kind of file, what it does is it renders it correctly on the UI for us, so that we don't have some crazy logic of resolving that from IPFS and then determining what kind of file type it is. And this is really, really handy if you're trying to just render out the NFTs like we are. And beneath that, what we're going to do is we'll have the NFT metadata.name. So this is just the name of the NFT. I think we called it treasure chest or something like that. And what we'll do beneath that finally is what we'll have is a button that calls the open function. Now, we haven't written the logic for the open function just yet, but we'll write that shortly after we finish rendering out the NFTs on the UI. Finally, we'll add the closing div tag, and this is all of the logic that we need to render the NFTs on the UI. And I'll go ahead and add all of the imports here. So we're missing the styles import, it looks like, so I'll paste that in. And it looks like we're missing the thirdweb NFT media, which should be available from the React SDK. So we'll just go ahead and import that. And we add our styles on the app.tsx file. This is just our global CSS. Go ahead and paste that in here as well. If we visit localhost 3000 now, and looks like it's been doing some stuff in the background, but go ahead and connect your wallet, and you should see Now our metadata gets resolved from IPFS for each of the NFTs in this NFT array. And we have a button that calls the open function, which we haven't written yet. We're about to go ahead and write that now. And next thing we want to do after we write that open function is display the tokens that got opened from the pack so that the user knows what tokens they just opened after they clicked the open button and approved that open transaction. So let's go ahead and write the open function now, and then we'll move on to the rendering of the tokens that we opened up. So if we go back to our index.tsx in our project, we can begin to write this open function now. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to call the pack.open function and store that result in a variable, and then set that variable in state. So when that state updates, we can show it on the UI in a new section that we're going to create down here. So let's go ahead and write async function open. I think we called it open, right? And what this is going to do is we can call the pack.open function. And as you can see, this takes in two parameters. The first one is the token ID of the pack NFT that you're trying to create. For us, that's 0. As you can see on the dashboard here, we have token ID 0. And so if we go ahead and open token ID 0, the second parameter is the amount. So you can actually open up multiple packs at once, as long as they're the same pack. So you could put in a text field where you have a configurable quantity if the user wants to open up more than one pack at once, but just for simplicity, in this example, we're just gonna say open one pack at a time. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna store the result, the awaited result of opening that pack in a variable called opened rewards is equal to await the result of that. And now what we can do is above this function, we'll have a stateful variable called opened pack rewards is equal to set open, sorry, this is just destructuring the React use state. So you'll need to import use state from React as well. And what this is equal to, if you're using TypeScript, you can set this to pack rewards, which is a type, which if you control click into this, you can see is using Zod to, okay, maybe that's not that helpful. You can actually see the opened rewards. So you can have an object containing 3 objects. One of those is the ERC20 rewards that you opened, which could be our gold coins, for example. You could open ERC721 rewards. We didn't have any ERC721 NFTs bundled into our packs when we created them, so probably won't have that in our packs for this example. And we're also going to have ERC1155 rewards, which would be our gold swords or our silver swords. So you'll be able to see all the different kinds of rewards that you opened from that one pack. And what we're going to do in this open function is say set opened pack rewards is equal to the result of awaiting that pack.open, which will contain the NFTs and the ERC20 tokens that we opened. And just for good measure, let's go ahead and console.log the opened rewards here as well. It's just so we can view that in the console. And now the next thing we want to do is we want to display the tokens that the user opened after they opened them. So if we go down here and we collapse the div that we just created that maps over the owned NFTs, what we're going to do in this section beneath this is we're going to, once again, we're going to map over the tokens to kind of transform each token into an object that shows the image and shows the metadata of the tokens that were opened up. Now, if you take a look at the type that comes back, you can see it just provides the contract address and the token ID if they are NFTs. Now, since we want to show the metadata of the NFTs and the metadata of the tokens that got opened up, we're going to break this down into components where each component loads the metadata of the token that we're trying to show. And it's going to match a similar kind of structure where we have the mapping over of the tokens. So what we're going to do is map over each ERC20 token as well as each ERC1155 token, and do a similar thing here where we transform them to show the metadata, show the name, and basically it's going to be a similar structure, but since the metadata itself doesn't come back from this function, we're going to break it down into components so that it's more reusable and more manageable. So what I'm going to do down here beneath the div where we showed all of the owned pack NFTs, what I'm going to do is create a bit of a separation using a horizontal line. It just has a bit of styling to split up the page a little bit. And then we'll have a new heading that says open rewards. So this is the section. It's more obvious to the user that this is what they've just opened from the pack. And then what we'll do is we'll check to see if the open pack rewards has actually been set yet. And if you recall in our open function, we have a undefined state of open pack rewards before the pack has been opened. And once that is opened, this value will stop being undefined and it'll start being of type pack rewards, and it'll contain the tokens that we opened from that pack. So this line is essentially saying, is there a opened pack, and is there any ERC20 rewards in that pack? Because some packs might only have NFTs and not have any gold coins. So that's why we need to make that check here. And then we have another subheading that says this is the ERC20 tokens that you opened from the pack, and a div. And here is where we do the magic again with the map function. So we're mapping over each of the ERC20 rewards. You can see this is an array of objects that contains contract address and quantity. And what we're doing is we're mapping over that and converting it into a component that I've called ERC20 reward box. And now we haven't created this component yet, but we're going to do that very shortly. But before we make those components, I'll just go ahead and copy and paste the logic for the ERC1155 tokens. So we're doing the exact same thing. We're checking, is there any rewards that have been opened? And do those rewards have any ERC1155 NFTs? And if they do, we're mapping over each of them and converting them into a new component that we're about to create. So the next step for us is to actually create those components. So at the root of your project, go ahead and create a new folder called components. And within them, we'll be creating two new files. The first one is the ERC20 rewards box.tsx. And the second one is the ERC1155 reward box.tsx. And it'll become a little bit more obvious why we have two components rather than just one. And it's because the way you get the metadata of the contract itself and the NFTs is a little bit different between the ERC20 way and the ERC1155 way. And that'll become obvious as we start to write these out. For the ERC20 reward box, the first thing we'll do is import all of the stuff that we're going to use. So we need React, we'll need a few things from the React SDK, and this is just some styling that I've made up. Again, you can use that from the source project as well. And then what we're going to do is, if we take a look at the type, if you're using TypeScript, if you're using JavaScript, this won't be as relevant, but if you take a look at the type that gets returned for ERC20 rewards, we get back the contract address and the quantity. So we can take that and use that as the reward prop and give that the type. Just copy paste that for the reward prop. And as we see down here, this is what we're mapping into. So we're saying the reward is equal to the reward, and that will match up with the type there. So then we move on to the creation of our functional component, and we're accepting the reward as props into this component. And the first thing we do is grab the token contract itself using the contract address of the reward that gets passed into this component. Now, as you can see, this is a hook for getting an instance of a token contract. It supports ERC20 compliant tokens. And this is going to grab the token instance, and you can access all kinds of things on this. So you can access the allowance, the balance, get the metadata as we're about to do. You can mint some if you have the permissions to do so. And this is just a really helpful instance of the token itself. But what we want to do, as GitHub Copilot seems to be knowledgeable about, is we want the metadata of our token. So if we go ahead and destructure the data as we have with our previous hooks, we have the use metadata hook, and we pass the token itself into that hook, and we get back the metadata about that token. So we'll get back things like the symbol, the name, the description, the image, all that stuff that we uploaded into the dashboard when we first created and deployed the token. Now we're ready to use the metadata of the token to display something on the UI. So we'll add a return statement and just add some basic styling and divs. And this is just a flag to say, okay, if there is and when there is data, this is what we're going to show. And here is what I've decided to show for this component. So we have a similar structure as we have for showing the owned tokens, the owned pack tokens of the connected wallet. So the first thing we have is the thirdweb NFT Media Component. And what that's going to do is it's going to accept the metadata of the token. So if you uploaded an image for your token, this will render out that image. I don't think we did, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. It'd probably just be empty for us. But if you did upload an image, it would show that information in this thirdweb NFT Media Component. And then we have the name and the amount. So this is the amount of tokens they earned from that pack. The ERC 1155 component is very similar, but there's just a few differences in the way that we load the metadata, since we want to load the metadata about the specific NFT rather than the actual contract itself. So the first thing we'll do is we import all of the necessary stuff from the SDK. We're using the big number type from Ethers. If you're not using TypeScript, you don't need to worry about this. But then we have React and styles once again. And we go through the same process to view the type that comes back for ERC 1155 tokens. So you can just grab that and copy paste it into your type here. So this is the reward prop that we're passing into this component. And as you can see, it's a little bit different compared to the ERC20 reward. In the token, we had contract address and quantity. In the NFT, we have the contract address, the token ID, and the quantity as well. So the difference is we have a token ID, which is the token that we're going to load metadata about rather than loading metadata about the actual contract. From here, we can do a very similar thing. We have a functional component called ERC 1155 without the second 5 here, and we grab the addition contract using the contract address of the reward that gets passed in, and then we use the use NFT hook, passing in the addition and the token ID to load the metadata about that NFT. So instead of loading the contract metadata, we've now loaded the NFT's metadata. So if they opened up a gold sword, they'll view the gold sword name, the gold sword image, gold sword description, and things like that. Any extra properties that you added will be in this data field. And from there, we're pretty much doing the exact same thing. We have the thirdweb NFT media. We're passing in the metadata of the NFT that we just loaded, and we have the name here. So now if we go back to our index.tsx, and we just add all missing imports, that'll import the ERC20 and the ERC 1155 tokens for us. If we go back and look at the localhost now, connect our wallet here, and you can see we have this open rewards section now. But since we haven't opened anything, we haven't opened the pack yet, let's go ahead and test out the logic of our open function first and see if the tokens show up in the open rewards section. So I've clicked the open button. I've been prompted to accept the open pack transaction. So I'll go ahead and confirm that one. And what should happen here is the state should get set. And the way React works is that whenever state changes, the re-render will be triggered. At that point, we will be able to see the components that we rendered in the code in that section here where we have the logic to say, is that a thing yet? Is there any tokens that we can map over? And if there is, then we'll start to map over them. So once this transaction gets approved, we should be able to see the open rewards that we just opened in here. And as you can see, we've opened up 5 NFT swords, and it looks like there's a bit of a bug in the logic of the not showing tokens. We can go ahead and fix that right after, but you can see the state has changed. Turns out in this pack, we didn't get any gold coins and we exclusively got silver swords. So it's a pretty unlucky pack, but I guess since the rarity we configured, the silver sword was the most likely item. And as you can see, that rarity and that randomness is coming into play here. And let's go ahead and fix up this 0 bug here. I think I know why that is the case. So we have a bit of a problem in our conditional rendering here, and this is a little funny bug. We're actually checking if there is open rewards, and then we're saying if that's the case, then render the length, which is 0. So we're literally rendering the number 0. And the way that we can do this is, instead of doing that, we can say check if there is open pack rewards .erc20 rewards. And the length is greater than 0. And we'll do the same down here. So we'll say open pack rewards and opened pack rewards .erc 1155 rewards and the length is greater than 0. So that should get rid of our 0 problem here. Looks good. And from here, we should be able to see if we open up a new chest, we should be able to see that we have, maybe we'll unlock some gold swords or some gold coins. Let's see. I just want to check the ERC20 rendering logic actually works as I expected. A little bit of a funny bug to have there, but if we open up a new pack, what should happen is the state will be refreshed and the existing pack's contents will be re-rendered into the new pack's contents. So if that transaction gets approved, and this time we did get lucky enough to get some gold coins. And since I don't have an image for the gold coin, I don't have that show up here. But if you did have that at the contract metadata level, you would see the image of that NFT media renderer component there. So as you can see, now we have the ERC20 tokens section, if there is ERC20 tokens in the contract or in the pack that we opened. And then beneath that, we have the ERC1155 tokens that we opened in the contract. And every time you open one of these treasure chests, the rewards will be refreshed and displayed live on the screen. And that is going to be it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed building out this fun little project where we have an ERC20 token, our own NFT collection of items, and then bundling them up all together into a set of ERC 1155 NFT packs. And I hope it's a lot of fun just even playing around with the application, opening up the pack, seeing if you get the rare items that you bundled up together. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll be coming out with lots more content teaching you how to build out these awesome Web3 applications and smart contracts by yourself. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.